All right, I want to welcome everybody to yet another episode of The Shadows Podcast. I am very, very excited for this episode today. As soon as we were connected by Scott Mason not too long ago. And I was very excited. I had this circled on my calendar for quite some time to have this individual on here. Brian Bachand, did I say that right?
You did a great job. Perfect.
All right. So he is the founder and CEO of Evolution. Evolution is a global coaching company. Life, both professionally and personally, is a continual evolution of seeking what brings us fulfillment and joy. This happens when they are aligned with their talents and values. He founded Evolution after over 20 plus years of evolutionary growth. He has quite the story, from working with influential senior leaders, conscientious career change, international work, complex team management, and the power of engaged networking, and realizing true leadership is all about your authentic self. Sir, welcome to the Shadows Podcast.
Thank you. It is so great to be here. I was so looking forward to today as well. I'm like, I woke up this morning, I'm like, today's the day we have our conversation. So thanks so much for the invite.
Absolutely. And I know we were talking about it briefly before we started coming on the air, but how is life right now in Toronto?
So life in Toronto from myself, I'm in a very positive, good place. It's challenging here. I'm American, but I live in Toronto, and the vaccination process has been slow here moving out. And they've actually extended kind of our lockdown because the cases are high right now for a couple more weeks. It's just what it is, and it's hard because south of the border, all my family and friends, everyone's moving onwards. But I think, here I actually came to accept it out of a few days of being frustrated of like, it's actually a gift to just continue to be quiet for a little bit and to continue to just do some more work that when things open up really on a significant level, I'm going to be fully aligned and ready to go out. So it's kind of a unique time.
Yeah, I remember when this pandemic kicked off, everyone was kind of, staying at home and not moving. We were used to it from living in Germany. So it really, for us, we were a little fortunate because it didn't really impact us as much. But I know some people, it's got to get out and move around. But yeah, where's your family at right now?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 5, believe it or not. So my mom is in Boston, another sibling in Boston. I have my sister's in Dallas, Texas, and brothers in Florida. So they're kind of spread all out. And, especially the ones in Texas and Florida, life is resumed in a very positive way. So
I don't think they know what these things are in Florida.
I don't think so. I think they probably like burnt them or something, you know what I mean? So they're kind of all moving on, but thankfully they're all in good health. And I hope to get down there sometime, in the summer or early fall.
Someone made a joke. I thought it was pretty funny. Not to make light of it, but they said that the mask got lifted in Florida in March of 2020.
I think so. I think that's really well put. Very well put.
Well, before we get into your incredible story, and I'm so ready to unpack this story here, we got to go through rapid fire questions.
I'm ready. I have been bracing for this. No.
First one for you. You could be one movie character. Who would you be?
Animated or as a person?
Animated.
Oh, that's even more challenging.
Yeah.
I would say, actually, you know what? I would say Dumbo. And the reason I would say Dumbo is because he was so genuine. And first of all, I love elephants. They're like my favorite animal. Second, he's very genuine. And what held him back, when he felt so insecure, were his ears, but that actually became his superpower.
Yeah.
And how that transformed his confidence in his life and being fully authentic. So I'd be Dumbo.
Okay. That's a good answer. We actually did the same thing, but we did it for television characters.
Okay.
The other day. I'll flip it. I'll ask you that one too. TV series, you could portray one character.
Yeah, TV series. I would say Oh my God, no, I don't want to do that show. TV series, I would say, um, there was an old show growing up called Eight is Enough. I'm so dating myself, like so dating myself. But I remember the dad on the show was just so cool because whatever the issue that came up, like it was always positive. Like, they could deal with it. And I just thought he was really cool, like how they were there. So I thought that was a TV character I always kind of liked.
Eight is Enough ran from March of 1977 to May of 1981.
Yeah, I saw the reruns. I saw the reruns. But I liked the show because it was kind of fun. Like I just remember seeing the reruns. I would come home from school. I liked that show. Yeah. So a more modern show, it's funny that the show I was gonna think of, but I'm like, there's really no one on that show that I'd want to be like was House of Cards. I'm like, I love that show, but I'm like, there's no character there that I really desire.
Just live in the environment.
Yeah, I just
be your own. Be Brian in that series.
I would try to be. Yeah, I try to be. Yeah.
We did that same thing on the our off the air YouTube one, and I said I would be Don Johnson from Miami Vice.
Okay, that's another old classic one too. Yeah, you'd have to have the hair and like the suits and like the shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, the clothes and the cars, and you always got Phil Collins playing somewhere in the background. So
everywhere who's ever listening to this is like, is this like an 80s rerun? Like,
yeah, they've turned it off at this point.
They're sort of like, I'm moving on. This guy's in Toronto. I'm out of here.
The demographics, it's going to be anyone younger than 30 is turned off this episode.
Yeah,
at this point.
Totally. I'm like, I don't want to say I want to be Frank from House of Cards. Like, I'm like, what I mean? So like, I'm not saying that.
So now we've killed off our audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great to be here.
You can have dinner with three people, three historical figures who are no longer with us. Now, it can't be family members. We'll leave it to like historical, well-known people. Yeah. Who would you have dinner with?
One would be Neil Armstrong, who landed on the moon, because I just think it's incredible what he did. Like being the first human to like walk on the moon and go there. Amazing. The second person would be Oscar Schindler, because I just think what he did, during the Holocaust and the lives he saved, and it was just absolutely incredible. And I would say the other person probably would be Gandhi, because I just think it's pretty amazing. I'd like to have a real meal, like a real conversation with him, because, to learn about his life, you hear all these other things about what he was really like, but I'd like to just really assess him for myself and really listen to his story and what led him to do, because he truly had a big moment of change in his own life. And we'd love to hear that. What a great dinner that would be. All three of those people there. Amazing.
I actually was fortunate enough to go to Schindler's factory.
Oh, wow.
It was incredible. It was really one of the highlights of my time in Europe. It was really cool. And Gandhi and Mother Teresa are the two that, no matter who I ask this question to, they have a seat at the table.
That's
some way, shape, or form.
It's amazing. I actually had the privilege of meeting Mother Teresa.
Really?
Many years ago, and we'll get into that. And I worked with her. I knew many of her sisters that worked with her. So yeah, and I just remember she came out and she's so small. I remember and I'm 6'1", and I just remember looking down, like she's so like her physical body is small, but powerful. Like she had a presence about her that even in this like kind of frail older state, when I met her, she was powerful.
See, now we're luring our listeners back in.
There we go. Yeah, definitely. It's better than 8 is enough. You know what I mean? Bring it on. Yeah, exactly.
At Miami Vice, we're getting them back in now.
Oh, we're rolling now. We are rolling now.
What, looking back to last year, we'll go back to March of 2020. What would you tell pre-COVID Brian about what's to come for the next year and a half for you?
Buy stocks in Zoom. Like if I was going to say anything, like get stocks in Zoom and ring lights, that going back at the computer, like invest in those things.
Eddie mics.
Yeah, totally. Mics, everything. So yeah, that would be one thing. You got to take advantage of the moment. Abundance, it's all about abundance. The more you have, the more you can do. So I would say, for myself, I would, really, and I think it's something I've done is just be open.
Yeah.
Just be open. Like, be open and be open to what will allow you to be even more creative. So that's kind of what I would just say. Be open, like right from the start. Just be open.
Yeah.
Just be open to all the change.
I was talking to Steve Gamlin the other day. He was talking about how COVID, basically everybody's climbing this mountain day in and day out, but COVID knocked a bunch of trees in the path. And he said some people don't know how to get around it. And it's real similar to Obstacles the Way, like one of the bolder story it tells in there. But he said some people, you got to walk all the way around. You're going to either run into roots or you're going to run into leaves. You just got to eventually get there. Some people have a chainsaw and they can fight through it. He said, but some just turn around and walk the other way. So he said it really showed you in terms of goals and what people were willing to do, like kind of where they were. He's like, this is, if you're not going to do something, if you didn't get it done during COVID, you might not get it done.
Totally. And it was interesting too. I mean, what happened for so many is it really showed, fear. So many people were grappled by fear. And, many people for the first time had to face themselves, that they might have had a very successful job, but they lived for the travel, right? They lived for the travel because maybe their home life wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Or they were constantly socializing, going out, and now that's taken away. And for many, it was the first time they were really alone with themselves. And what did that mean for them and their relationships? Yeah, it was a unique time for so many.
Very true. Well, you survived rapid fire.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, that wasn't bad at all.
It wasn't bad. Everybody thinks it's going to be bad, and it's not really.
It was fun, actually.
It's the guests that I don't like in the pre-interviews that I give them like the really, really difficult ones.
Okay.
Eight words from the dictionary that really stand. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, you did great. So now let's start talking about your story. You got an incredible story. When we first connected and started talking to you, and it was like, look, tell me a little bit about your story. It was instantly like, 2 sentences in, yeah, this is going to be a good episode. So tell us first about your upbringing. You mentioned you grew up with several siblings. Talk to us about your childhood, pretty much up until high school.
Yeah. So, I grew up just outside of Boston on the North Shore, and I'm the youngest of 5, but I'll say this though, I was a huge surprise. So there's 16 years between myself and the oldest. I was, one of those, babies, like, I think my parents, they had my sister, and then they had twins, and then they had my brother. So three births, 4 children. And, my dad was doing well. My dad ended his career as chairman and CEO of a big bank. And at that time he was doing really well. And, all of a sudden my mother found out she was pregnant. And, it was just at that time, almost close to 40, it was like, what does this all mean? And so I grew up almost like an only child, because by the time I was in the 4th grade, they were all gone. And, my sister was married. She married a guy from West Point, so military as well, lived in Germany. And the twins went on as well. One actually went to the Air Force and, went on as well and got married. And so for myself, I grew up with like my parents. My siblings would come home at different times. And that was a gift because, first of all, being the youngest, they're so broken in, and, they didn't make issues out of things that like probably they did with the first or second. And so I matured very quickly, and my parents really enabled me to go to certain things at a very young age that I matured very fast, and I was exposed to a lot. My dad was very good about, bringing you to things and being exposed to different events and people. And I loved that. I really enjoyed that. And I grew up Catholic. This leads into a little bit of the story, but it wasn't
Mhm.
an over the top Catholic family. We went to church on Sundays, and we never said grace at meals or anything. But the difference was, my mom used to say a prayer with me before I went to school every day, and it was this simple little prayer that I still know by heart, and it was just really beautiful. Like, so God and faith was spoken about
Yeah.
at home, but it was just kind of like, it was just all kind of blended together. And I was fortunate. I mean, I did lots of travel as a kid, went to great schools, had a beautiful upbringing, and it was really nice. And then I went to university in Ohio. So I'll end there. But growing up, it was nice. One of the things I really loved where we lived on the North Shore, and at the end of our street was this wildlife sanctuary. And I used to go in there all the time, especially in just for long walks. There's this place called the Rockery, where all these, like, they're kind of like little caves and things you can walk through.
Yeah.
And so nature was really important to me growing up, and now it still is. So whenever I'm with trees, it just reminds me of kind of growing up in that kind of forest atmosphere, which I just really love.
That's where that meditation and the breathing techniques probably stem from.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was just, yeah, it was really beautiful. Like, I was always drawn to that. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
city guy, like at heart. Like, I love cement and I love sirens and like being in the heart of the city. Like, I love that energy and
Yeah.
things going on. But I'm also really drawn to that beauty of just listening to nature and being connected there and getting lost in that. It's always resonated.
Just you explaining it sounds so peaceful.
No,
I,
thank
I, was,
you.
I was sitting here like, hell yeah, it does sound good.
Yeah, it really, yeah, it's special. It's really special.
So when you were in high school, like junior high, high school age, what were some of your aspirations to do as an adult?
So, it was funny. I actually wanted to be, I think, a physician, growing up. And I remember probably like early high school, there was a doctor who lived across the street. And I remember asking him, he was an obstetrician. And I said to him, I said, "Oh, that's really interesting." And he looked at me, he said, "Brian, do you like to sleep?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't be an obstetrician." You know what I mean? He said, "That is not the job." He said, "I'm always going to the hospital at different hours." And so I was intrigued by medicine.
Yeah.
I really loved medicine, but I struggled in school with like biology and all these courses. Like, it did not come natural for me. And so it kind of was frustrating. I'm like, well, I'm going to be good in science if I want to be a physician. So that was an aspiration, but I kind of had to let that go because I knew it didn't come natural for me.
Mm.
And one of the things that was natural for me was communication and connecting with people. So I really thought about education as well, was a big area. And I loved serving people, and I loved that sense of helping them. And so that was just something I didn't know exactly where, but that was a big core of who I was, and making impact for people. That was just something that brought me a lot of joy.
And what made you settle on seminary school versus, possibly being an instructor or an educator?
Yeah. So what happened was I went to university, and I went to a university in Ohio. It was a Catholic university, and what was nice about that is I studied communications when I got there. So I was focused on some type of communications, like broadcast communications, growing in that area. And while I was at university, I got involved with some of like the Catholic chaplaincy
Hmm.
office. They always have like a things for students. And I spent my junior year, half of my junior year in Austria, and I loved it. I got really involved
Talk about
with.
outdoorsy. Ooh.
It was amazing. It was one of the most
Mm.
beautiful moments. I was 20 years old when I got there, and the university bought this 14th century. It was an old Carthusian monastery, and it had been renovated. And so it was like kind of the European campus. And so we were at the foothills of the Alps, and every weekend could travel. And while I was there, I had a blast, and I got involved with some more of the Catholic chaplaincy things and stuff. And I remember my senior year in undergrad, there was a notice that went up saying, for anyone that has ever thought about maybe a possible vocation, thinking about priesthood, there was going to be a retreat in Pittsburgh. And I remember going. I remember signing up and going. And that was the weekend that kind of helped show me that I had a desire. There was always a sense of like spirituality within me, and that sense of service. And that just kind of aligned it at that time. I look back now when I've been asked questions like, what would you tell your younger self? I would say, probably one of the biggest things is you can live that sense of spirituality outside of a structured, organized religion. And at the time, because I grew up Catholic and you had a sense of spirituality or being connected with the world around you and others, you would just thought right away, well, you had to go in the church, where now I know that's not the case. And so that's the one piece I would have told myself then, to say, you can look at other areas.
So what changed for you after that experience in Pittsburgh?
So it was a great weekend. I remember going there, and there were about, I would say like maybe 40 guys, university age, from different universities, from Carnegie Mellon, from other places. I was there. And what really happened was, while I was there listening to these talks, and it was led by this one particular Jesuit, it just really resonated to take the step to really look into applying to the seminary, to take that inspired action of like, wow, there's something here. I need to test this further. Because like for so many, right? Like anyone who's listening, if you ever had an idea about something, you can spend forever thinking about it. Oh, like maybe, I want to start a podcast. You know what I mean? You think about it, oh, I could do this and this. And then like 6 months turn into a year, turn into 2 years. Or you think about some type of course you want to take. Well, it's the same thing true for me. There was something inside my being that needed to be explored. And the logical next step was to apply to the seminary and test it further.
And then how did that journey go, applying for seminary school?
Yeah, it's obviously like, it's one of those things, like many things in life, you learn as you go along, So basically I'm like, okay, like it was like March of my senior year, and all of a sudden my life's now going in a different direction. And I just called the archdiocese, and they have something called the vocation office. And you basically say, hey, I'm interested, da, da, da. So, it took several months. So I started in March, and I was accepted at the end of July. And so you had to write, there were essays, you had to get letters of recommendation, you had to go for some interviews. They sent you for several hours of psychological testing as well.
Wow.
And then, and they, they gather all that information together. And then the final interview is with a board. And I remember that. That meeting. And basically, they make the decision at that time that you can be accepted to come in the seminary to further, they call it discernment, to further test, what may be happening. And they oftentimes will tell you in the process if they don't feel you're ready. But for me, everything went well. I was accepted in the end of July, and I started the end of August.
Wow. How stressful was that whole process?
It was really not stressful.
Really?
It really was it was really affirming.
Yeah.
Like I was excited, I'm pretty organized. Even at a young age, I was pretty like determined, like, okay, here's the next step. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And every meeting and conversation was great. It was very encouraging. It was really positive. And I was excited. I was excited.
So what was next for you after finally getting the nod for seminary school, or for, like you said, the continuation?
Yeah. So, what happened is the seminary is a 6-year process after your undergrad. And they usually do like 2 years of philosophy, 4 years of theology. I fortunately was able to skip one of the years. And the reason was, it's not because I was like some brilliant human being. It's only because I had some philosophy credits and I had a language at the time. So as a second language. So at that time it was German. And so I was able to pass over that, saying that I was fluent enough in it that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to have a language requirement. And so it was a great experience. I mean, one of the things about seminary was that it was a lifestyle. That you began every day. There were prayers in the morning. There was mass. Then you had your courses. You could go to the gym. You could go biking. You had placement work as well. And every year just kind of kept, for me, it was just kind of a nod, a continue that strong nod that you're going in the right direction. And they test you. I mean, it's a test. Like, it's a rigorous process every year. You're evaluated on every year by your peers, by obviously those who are in charge of your formation. And every year it was very exciting to see what was happening next.
And you went from there to this is where I think your journey gets really exciting, and you can fill in the gaps in between.
Sure.
You ended up at the Vatican.
Yeah. So what happened is that I was ordained in '99,
Mm-hmm.
and my first assignment was a parish. Actually, my first assignment was a parish west of Boston for 5 years, and in year number 4, for many may recall the sex abuse crisis that happened within the church. One of the major epicenters where it really erupted was in Boston. And like that movie Spotlights, that won the
Mm-hmm.
Academy Awards, which really brings to life all that was happening. So I was a young priest in the parish, and I remember learning all about it the same time everyone else was learning, and it was intense, because you're dealing with parishioners who were angry and frustrated, and I was also angry and frustrated and bewildered by all that was taking place. But one of the things that happened was the cardinal, who was the head of the archdiocese at that time, Cardinal Law, he resigned. And that really did birth a new chapter of healing and restitution. And there was a new cardinal appointed, and his name was Sean O'Malley, who's still there. And he was just really powerful. He's a healer. He is someone that was brought in specifically to bring healing. And I remember the day he was installed at the cathedral, listening to him speak. And I was seated there in the pew, and I remember saying to myself, I want to help this man. I want to help him. And 6 months later, on a Thursday night, I got a phone call asking if I could come in the next day to headquarters, which is called the Chancery. They said they want to speak about an opportunity. So I went in, and I sat down, and it was one of the other bishops, and he looked at me and he said, Brian, so I have some news for you. He said, the new cardinal has selected you to be his new private secretary, which would translate into being like chief of staff.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, unless you have any reason not to accept it, it begins in 3 weeks. And, it was one of those moments that when you have that job, when you're in that role, oftentimes you're being groomed for other leadership as well. Yeah. But my life at a very young age changed overnight. 3 weeks later, I was living with him. He lived across the hall from me, and my role was to support him. And so when he went to the Vatican, which we did on a regular basis, I was there with him. When he went to go meet with the Pope, I was there. When he had diplomatic events, I went with him to those. And it was incredible. Like, on a global level, to work at that pace it was amazing.
Oh my gosh. Is that where you had interactions with Mother Teresa?
No, I didn't. I had an interaction with Mother Teresa a couple years before, while I was still in the parish. She came to Boston. But the Cardinal O'Malley, knew her extremely well. He was very close to her. And a really cool story is that, you know, like I mentioned, he's someone that was known for bringing healing, and he had served in another diocese where there had also been some scandals. He called Mother Teresa and asked her to send some of her nuns to his diocese to be present. And so when I worked for the Cardinal, her nuns were in Boston, and I used to go, I would say on a regular basis, to go say mass for them, be present with them. And they were really amazing. So that's how I got involved with the community. And then someone that I knew that I went to university with, it was very interesting. She actually studied in Austria with me. I found out years later, she joined Mother Teresa's order.
Really?
And yeah, she was from Minnesota. I always remember this. And she was based in Mexico City. And I remember being in Mexico City when I was a priest, and I got in touch with her, and I went to where all Mother Teresa's nuns were. I had a nice visit with her in the whole order, and had dinner with them. And yeah, it was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Wow. Wow. So that's why Mother Teresa's not at your table, because you've already.
Oh yeah, we go way back. We go way back. We go way back. Yeah, we go way back.
What stories do you have about interacting with the Pope?
Yeah, so there's two. So I met John Paul II 6 months before he died. I was there with the Cardinal. We were there for like a week of meetings and different things. And, you know, one thing, like a little like Vatican history for those that may not know. So there's the Vatican, you know, like downtown Rome. But then about an hour to an hour and a half outside of Rome is something called Castle Gandolfo, which is kind of the Pope's summer palace, is what they used to call it. And the reason it existed is because during the centuries when Rome becomes stifling hot and so brutal.
And it does.
It's brutal. It's really brutal. The popes used to go out of the city to Castle Gandolfo because it's high on a hill overlooking a lake. The air is cool, and they would hold their meetings and things there. John Paul II was someone that would oftentimes spend time there during the summer. And so he was living there the time we went to go see him. So I got to go to Castle Gandolfo, which many people don't get to go into. And I was able to go in. And I remember we're there and we're walking down the hall, and there's like these beautiful, like shuttered windows opened up, and it's overlooking the lake. And you're trying to be cool. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, you're like,
you know,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, no one prepares you for this. Like, no one prepares, but you know, you're trying to be there for the Cardinal, and you're young, and you're like, in your mind, you're like, holy crap, this is like amazing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this is like, wow. And so all of a sudden we got down. I remember there were these two big like wooden doors, like the handles that go down. And there was one of the representatives came out, and I remember that clicking sound. Yeah. And we opened the doors, and he was seated behind his desk. And I remember there was like a big window, and the Cardinal sat down, and you know your place in those moments. So I go off to the side. And then after they greeted and different things, the Cardinal brought me over to be introduced to the Pope. And I remember like kind of kneeling down and kissed his ring. And then he gave me a pair of rosaries. Wow. And he couldn't speak that well. I remember he was quite frail, but he had these piercing eyes that just looked right at you. And I just always remember that. And I still have that picture. So that, you know, there's a photographer there, and I still have that picture. And then 6 months later when he died, I was at the funeral, and it was really incredible that I was privileged to be, you know, in the very front. And the night before, I went with the Cardinal to the U.S. ambassador's home, where there was a private reception for just the U.S. cardinals with the presidents of the United States, the First Lady. President Clinton was also there, Condoleezza Rice, George Bush, the father, George Bush, the current president. And it was this very intimate setting in that moment as well, which was, it was humbling, and it was just amazing at the same time.
Wow. No, I appreciate you sharing those stories. That's really incredible experience there.
Yeah, no, definitely. The
Gosh.
other cool story, we have time, I'll
Mhm.
tell you this
Go
one.
ahead. No, please.
This one is kind of fun because it's really cool. I never in my wildest dreams, it was not in the job description. Like, you know what I mean? When people say
Mhm.
things like, oh, that's not part of my job, I'm like, well, guess what? Listen to what I had to do. I never knew this. So we were in Rome. John Paul II died, and it was Pope Benedict was the Pope at that time.
Mhm.
And so we flew to Rome. We had meetings. And the Cardinal said to me, I don't know if it was the Pope's birthday or something. He said, Brian, I had my meeting with the Pope on Thursday. I'd like to get him something. And I'm thinking, okay, like, you gonna go on Amazon? Like,
Yeah. What do
what
you
are you
get the
like,
Pope?
yeah, what are you gonna get the Pope? So he said, so could you pick something up? Can you pick something up? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what am I supposed to get him? Like, like, what am I supposed to do? So, and I'm like, what's the price range? Like, you know what I mean? Like all these practical questions. So at times I was kind of like the magic man, like whatever his problem was became my problem. And then it was there. So anyway, we came to a conclusion of like, okay, this is what it would be, different things. So I changed and I remember like, I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of a fun day. Like I have a day to go shopping for the Pope in Rome. And so I'm out and I just was like, I had a couple thoughts in mind. And I was going down this one neighborhood that I knew, and I went by this very nice store, and they had these beautiful pens in the window, like really nice ink pens and stuff. So it was a particular brand of a very nice one. So I went into this small Italian store and I saw the box, and the Pope played the piano. He was a classical pianist. And this one particular like fountain pen had the piano keys around the base of the pen cap. And it was really nice. So I said, I would like to take this and stuff. So he's like, oh, lovely. And so it's all really nice. So as he's there, he's this really nice older Italian gentleman. I said to him, I said, actually, this is for the Pope.
He's
And
like,
he was
sure,
like,
pal.
yeah. He's like, yeah. So all of a sudden he's like, yeah. And I said, no, it really is. I said, I just want you to know that. And he kind of looks at me. And so I took out my card and showed him who I am. And I said, he's like, wow. I said, so when we have the pictures taken, I will make sure to come back to give you one of the
Oh,
photos.
that's cool.
And he's like, wow, thank you. So I remember going from there to buy this wrapping paper. And I remember seeing this store and it had like Gregorian chant. And there I am in my room at the Vatican with Scotch tape, this gift of the Pope. And I'm the one wrapping this gift, Pope. And I remember the next day going in and seeing the Pope open it. Like, it's there. And they have the photos and all this stuff. What he did with it, who knows? But, it was there. And I remember it was just an amazing moment. Like,
Surreal.
it really was surreal. Like whoever would have thought I'd be buying a gift for the Pope. And, I remember going back to that store and giving, the gentleman the picture of the Pope with the
Wow.
pen and stuff. Yeah, those were really special moments.
You're so much better. I would have gone to like H&M or Bed Bath and Beyond or something.
Totally. I'm thinking, I'm gonna get him. Like he can get anything he needs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, exactly.
You almost
So,
have to go to a specialty store, like a
yeah,
little hole in the wall, mom and pop type,
yeah.
handmade type place can't go to, like I said, Aldi or somewhere. So,
Apple.
yeah,
Here's some AirPods. Yeah.
some AirPods.
Yeah. Enjoy them.
So you ended up walking away from that lifestyle. I think you said you were in search of what do you desire. So explain that next chapter in your book for us.
Yeah. So, it was an amazing experience and it's a real gift. And I'm a firm believer that you're placed in situations and you take on particular roles because they align with your gifts, but they also help you also grow as a person. And that's what happened for me. And for me, where I was at, I came to realize I knew I was being, a groomed for more, and having more conversations and things. And I really wasn't sure that was how I wanted to spend my life. I also came to terms with that I wanted to love another person.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to be truly authentic to who I was. And, I never hid that, but I wasn't fully aligned. And I came to terms with being a gay man and knowing that I could live that freely outside of being clergy and bring that with joy and a sense of spirit and my gifts into the world. And so I always ask myself an important question: what do I desire? And that's why I desired. So I didn't make a rash decision and be like, I quit, I'm out of here. Like, take your pens and your gift shopping. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing any of this stuff. And it was like, that's not it. I actually worked with someone for about 9 months. It was I always say this, a good Jewish psychologist. And I say that on purpose because I didn't want someone who was Catholic.
Yeah.
I wanted someone neutral that, really could just let me be. And I could honestly say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. Test me, challenge me, be open. And that was such a gift because it really did affirm that what I desired was in line with what I wanted to do. So I freely resigned, and all in good terms. I still speak to the cardinal once or twice a year, but I knew I wanted to live my life in joy. I wanted to live my life authentically, and I wanted to bring those gifts in a new way and impact the world.
And that's awesome you did that. And what's even better about it is it sounds like you have zero regrets whatsoever. Like you knew that was the right decision to do. After that, you became an executive in New York. Am I correct with that?
Yep. So, obviously, when I was in the process of leaving, I'm trying to you're trying to figure out what's next. What I mean? Like, how do you do all this? And what happened is I was looking at different opportunities. I was going for interviews. I was still working for the Cardinal. So I was very quiet about this. But I was going for some interviews, looking at opportunities. And one day there was a position that came up to be a director at the American Cancer Society in Manhattan. And the qualifications that they wanted just aligned. They wanted someone that could build high-end relationships. It was in the world of philanthropy. It aligned. And when I saw that job online, I applied for it, followed up, and that's the job I got. Wow. And from there, went on to become the executive director at NYU Medical. And I loved my life in Manhattan. I loved it. And it was just amazing, and building a big network and the energy. And it was also a chance to come into my own in a powerful way. And that was really great, because one of the myths that often happens when a priest leaves is, they won't be successful, or, God won't bless you. You know what I mean? And that's wrong. I mean, if anything, I felt so guided. I felt so aligned and felt so much support. It was incredible. And continued as an executive, met a Canadian. That was the reason for the move to Toronto. That relationship did not continue, but I decided to stay, which was fine, and have gone on to meet someone else. It was all great. And then, decided to go out on my own after several years, being successful in what I was doing.
Because you worked for the University of Toronto Faculty of Medicine, correct?
I did, yeah. I ended there as executive director as well. They were doing a $2 billion campaign, and the Faculty of Medicine had the biggest piece of the pie. They had $500 million to raise. And so I was brought on originally for one specialized area, and then I became the head of it. And it was amazing because that offered opportunities. They sent me to China, I think 4 times, my US connections. I loved building the team. And it offered up other opportunities to join boards and things that which were great. And then I became a partner in executive recruitment. After that, I was recruited to become a partner for kind of VP to CEO recruitment, to head up mostly within the not-for-profit healthcare space. And that was amazing too. I've always felt comfortable, and I love working with executives. And it was really at that moment where things started to shift again. What do I desire?
Wow. All the places you've been, I'm sure a trip to Saskatoon's nothing for you now. um, after being all these places. Wow.
It's fun.
And
I
I
can't
will,
wait to travel again. I just want this pandemic
oh,
to be over so I can
you'd probably
travel.
like Saskatoon right now. I will say you're a dual citizenship, right?
I am now. Yeah, I am. I
So
became a dual citizen about 2 years ago.
congrats. You're the first Canadian we have on the Shadows podcast.
Yeah, thanks. I always say I cut me at my core. I'm stars and stripes,
Yeah,
but I'm wrapped in a maple leaf. That's what I
there you
say.
go.
So yeah, yeah.
I like it. So now tell us about you. You talked about what do I desire. So does that bring us to the evolution of evolution?
Totally, totally. And so I desired to go out on my own. I think there was always a sense of an entrepreneurial spirit. Like, and I
Mm-hmm.
say this in a sense of, humility that I think, I kind of showed that, to leave the clergy and then to go to New York City, like knowing one person and start a whole new life, that's an entrepreneurial spirit right there.
Yes,
And
it
then
is.
to change careers again and change a country and then move in. So it's always been part of my DNA. And so I decided to go out on my own. And the circumstances just aligned to be able to do that, which were great. And I really thought, I'm not kidding you, I'm like, in 3 months, I'll have this company up and running. Like, it was originally was going to be for like helping not-for-profit leaders and how to help them make more money and raise money and all that stuff. And I'm kidding you, it was the first time in my life, it was a hot mess. Like it was not aligning. Like it was, my ego was raging because I
Oh,
was
okay.
putting so much pressure on myself. Like, oh, I've got to get this done. I got to get this done because everyone's waiting, which was so not true. And it wasn't clear. And so finally I got some great advice. I said, Brian, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to have some more time. And so I did. And I asked that same question, what do I desire? And I desired to travel. So I went to Australia. And I went to Australia, I'd never been, and to see a friend. And the most important thing was I did a wellness retreat, which I wanted to do. It was like 7 days of like everything was organic and it was hiking and yoga and meditation. And on that retreat is where everything, the evolution came to the next level. I remember there was this one particular like meditation session that I was involved with. And it was at that moment I knew there was something blocking me. And I just wanted insight to what it was. And what it was that I needed to embrace fully that spiritual aspect of who I was. I'm not talking religion, but that spirituality of deep intuition, being led by that, helping others be in lines. Because when I left the priesthood, I never hit that side of who I was, but I was so focused on proving that I was going to be a good executive and a good leader that I kind of pushed it down. But as soon as I embraced that sense of divine, that sense of purpose and spiritual alignment was so much part of me, that's when everything clicked.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew I was able to have clarity. And I knew then it was going to be called evolution.
And for our listeners out there that have never heard or not familiar with evolution, explain to them what exactly your company is.
Yeah, so it's named twice on purpose. So the first evolution represents our natural evolution as humans, the DNA we're born with, how a pandemic affects all of us. But the second evolution is the one that we can own for ourselves, how we choose to evolve, both personally and professionally. Because when you do that inner work as a leader, as a professional, then you're more aligned to who you are and the impact you want to make in the world. So I work on 3 areas. I love working with leaders one-on-one. I do a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching. A lot of them are new CEOs or people in new leadership roles that really believe they want to create a culture that is impactful as an evolved leader to bring a sense of newness to the world and the employees they're with, still make great revenue and impact and all of that, but truly have a sense of, compassion and consciousness to make the environment around them even at a higher level. So I work one-on-one with leaders, organizations and a lot of public speaking about really going deeper into, how do you define what it is you desire? And as a professional leader, as an organization, and really make that impactful. Because when you're aligned and you do that inner work, that's where the greatest transformation can take place and have the greatest impact and abundance that was going to just bring you to a level that would never exist before.
And look, I'll tell the listeners, we did a little breathing technique before we came on the air. I was sold right there. I was like, this was good stuff. So where can listeners find out more about evolution?
Yeah. So, you can go to the website, which is simply, evolution.com. I'm going to say this right now. It's going through an evolution. It's all in the process of being updated. So, you can connect through there. So stay tuned for that. Keep a watch out. LinkedIn is a platform that I'm probably the most active. And that is something that, you can send me a direct message. You will hear from me within that day or the next day. I'm really good on that. And that's where I spend a lot of my time posting and doing different aspects. Those are the two best ways to reach out and to follow and to engage. And so, welcome to hear from anyone that would like to connect.
The pandemic. A lot of people struggled with it. Some people really were successful business-wise. What was a pro and a con that came out of this pandemic for you and your company?
The greatest pro for me was connecting with individuals around the world and building some of the most authentic, impactful relationships I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, I have had so many friends or network, I've known people for years, but I have found through the pandemic, so many of the people I've connected with that I've never met in person, but we've had so many like virtuals. I feel closer to them and more aligned to them than I've ever felt to some other people in person.
Isn't it crazy?
It's incredible. Been one of the greatest gifts. And so because of those conversations, investing that's how things keep flowing and things keep happening. So hands down, that's been the greatest joy for me of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'd say that's the same thing for me, just, instructing and doing this podcast. What about the con?
Yeah, I would say the biggest con for me has really been more recently. It's been more recently just being in Toronto with the extended lockdown and the frustration that has come with that at times. That has been a little tough, and I'm grateful and I appreciate, everything that I have and where I'm at. But I have to say it's kind of started to wear a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's been a little challenging. That's probably been the hardest. I think it just keeps getting extended, and misinformation or things open, things close, things open, things close.
Yeah.
That's gotten on my nerves a little bit, but overall the other has outweighed it on the positive.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to both the pros and the cons. You're like, just let me go to a Blue Jays game at this point.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And just the sense of like being able to go into a store like now, like, and just, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm just so
What's the
ready.
big one over there? Eaton's?
Well, there's Eaton Center. There's Eaton Center, which is I think there used to be a store here called Eaton's. There's Hudson Bay, which is a big name as well. But yeah, I think that's the thing. People are just ready to have some of that human connection again.
Yeah.
Myself included.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm the same. We're actually, at the time this episode is released, we'll have finally been back in residence teaching, and it will have been close to a year and a half. And I am about to go crazy I'm starting to talk to objects around the room at this point. What are some goals for you in the near future?
One of the biggest goals, and it's something I'm just really intentional about, and it's a big focus, is I want to do more retreats. That is a big focus of mine that I want to do. And I'm actually having some conversations just at a kind of high level right now with people that I really believe retreats are powerful, and I think there's going to be a real desire when things open up more and more for people wanting to connect. And there are many people who are waking up, that, through the pandemic have developed a mindfulness practice, developed a sense of journaling, doing some self-development. So the time is going to be really appropriate. And I want to be involved with retreats because it's like when you go on vacation, right? Maybe you can relate. You do things on vacation that you normally wouldn't do. Like, you're like, yeah, I'll have an ice cream at 11 o'clock in the morning walking down the street. Or no, you do things because you just—
Gelato looks really good.
Yeah, it's like, let's do it. Same thing on a retreat. Oftentimes you'll be more open to listening to yourself, experiencing some type of meditation or yoga that helps you go inward. And I really believe that's where I want to spend a lot of my time in helping, especially leaders and individuals with others, to go deeper.
Yeah.
And to really tap into their gifts. So that's a big intention, one of my biggest goals, and can't wait to have you there when they happen.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely do it. I'm all about being intentional too. So I'm not about putting things on a back burner. 50 years from now, when people mention your name, what do you want them to say about you?
I want them to be able to say that Brian was a lived example, that your life is one big evolution, and his life impacted evolutionary change for human beings to really be fully aligned. Because I know my purpose is not just about helping people in this moment or the people, the next generation. It's to impact for generations. And that's what I want people to be able to look and say, this began a moment of deep human evolution in a new way.
Nice. Well, I appreciate it. And final comments for our listeners.
I look forward to hearing from you. As I always say, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So if you feel a little internal nudge that there was something here that kind of poked interest besides the 8 is enough comment and the Miami Vice ones, reach out. Love to hear from you because I love having authentic, open conversations. So reach out, don't hesitate. And it's been a real joy to be with you today.
I appreciate it. I'm interested to see how many streams those 2 television shows get now and how many royalty checks we don't get from it. No, thank you so much for being a guest here. We're going to have all the contact information for you. If you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube or on any of the podcast platforms, it'll be in the episode description. Sir, thank you very much for being a guest here today.
Thank you. All the best to you. And I look forward to following your great mission and work in the world too. So thank you.
And I will hit you up when I'm in Toronto. Trust me.
Looking forward to it.
Well, folks, that is going to conclude this episode of the Shadows Podcast.